Consistency, consistency, consistency. So the word consistency gets overused and used a lot in personal brand and leadership media. And what people are always saying is post consistently, show up consistently, be consistent with your messaging, right? And that advice is not inherently wrong, but I think that it misses the point in a way that really will cost you a lot of wasted effort. And the question is not, are you showing up regularly? There's actually a deeper question, which is the market learning something from what you're putting out? Because you don't build authority by saying something once, you actually build it by becoming associated with a pattern of thinking over and over and over again. And consistency is really not frequency. Again, we're going back to the signal. Consistency is repeated evidence of your judgment. And those are two completely different things. Why does this matter in medical aesthetics? There are two failure modes that I see in this industry. So the first one is overposting without a signal. And we see that quite a bit. We see lots of things that are very reactive. Leaders who are everywhere: Instagram, LinkedIn, podcast appearances, newsletters. But the output doesn't add up to a position. Every post is a different idea, and every platform is a different version of them. And the audience sees activity, not authority. Why does this matter in medical aesthetics? And so there are two failure modes that I see consistently in this industry. And the first thing is leaders that are posting everywhere. They're, LinkedIn, Instagram, YouTube, newsletters, but every version you see of that person is completely different. There's no coherent thought process or judgment or position or thesis that really holds it all together. That is just activity. That's not authority. And the second one is underposting from perfectionism. And this is something I will say that I really did struggle with a lot, because perfectionists, you may have ADHD, you might have other things going on, but you want things to be perfect. So you're like, I'm just not going to show up. But when you don't show up, guess what? The world does not get to know you. And I say, show up with a coherent message and do that consistently. Every time that you put something out, you practice in the doing, right? And so there are leaders who have extraordinarily strong judgment, and they're waiting until they can express it perfectly. I've met so many practitioners like this. And even on the executive level, I've met people like this. They have such beautiful frameworks, such amazing work that they have done, but they're worried about how they're going to come across in a medium that's recorded and there forever. And they're like, "Ooh," and it's something. But, those people, many times I see that they're almost invisible in a wider scope, but their standard goes unwitnessed at scale. Uh, it is witnessed, for example, on a practice founder level, it's witnessed in the practice. They're doing great work there. On an executive level, their companies are doing great, all those type of things. But who they are will just fade off into the distance if someone else takes their role. And my whole thing with narrative equity that we've been talking about this, in this series is really you want to own your narrative asset. You should not leave that up to anybody, not outsourced to a social media manager, not outsourced to a leadership media company like ours, not outsourced. You want to own that and have partners that help you consistently in a disciplined way tell that story to the world. Again, overposting and underposting because you're a perfectionist, neither of them actually leads to any narrative equity. So, what does build brand equity? Brand equity, as I mentioned before, is built by having a consistent body of work that has a coherent message. So, no matter where you show up, people are getting the same the same message in 10 million different ways, hitting it home, right? Let's go with the framework like I always do. So I'm going to start with the neuroscience of this because I really find it really interesting when I'm kind of like dorking out and doing my research because it kind of really reframes the whole conversation. There's a way that a brand becomes recognizable through what research call brand cues. And these are repeated, consistent elements, a phrase, a framework, a visual, a tone that your audience begins to associate with you automatically. It's like a shortcut in their mind. And let's see, there was a stat here that I wanted to share with you. Brand cue research says that strong repeated brand cues increase brand saliency by 52%. Brands strong on instinctive perception and emotional connection had 55 higher percent brand equity. That's huge, right? And so when these cues are strong and repeated, like I said, they increase your brand saliency. And so that consistent output is building. You're not focused on your following, even though that's gonna come eventually, but it might be a little slower than you want, but it's a cognitive shortcut in the minds of the right people, right? And what does this actually look like in practice? Authority is not built by performing mastery. It's really built by demonstrating your thinking. When you share how you approached a decision, what you weighed, what you rejected. It's really when you talk about the standard that you actually held when you were going through something, not when you're in it, when you're past it, your leadership standard. And none of that is actually visible unless you put it into the media. Again, one of my favorite examples that we do, one of our tenets is excavation before creation. And I'm going to keep hammering that. But again, finding out who the core person is, their origin story, what they want to be known for, what they have done, and what decisions they made in their life that affects the principles and values that they have today before we create anything. That's the most important part. I know that I really love like Warren Buffett, right? And Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger are guys I like to read their things. So Charlie Munger, rest in peace. Warren Buffett recently stepped down as the chairman of Berkshire Hathaway, something and he always put out shareholder letters. He recently spoke at their shareholders conference, even though he's like retired. Charlie Munger's children have written books about him. He actually wrote his own books as well. So these are men that, in Charlie Munger's case, for example, billionaires, right? And they still thought, or he still thought, it's important for people to know how I think. It's important for people to know how I approach investing. It's important for people to understand what I think about philanthropy, right? And those things cause people to be connected to them. So they have great partners, they have great companies, they have great businesses. And because part of that has to do with what they stand for, right? And so in aesthetics specifically, there's so much expert knowledge that lives inside these private decisions. Like how you do this, like how you talk to a patient when they're kind of going through a trauma, or how you talk to a patient when they're upset about something, how you talk to a team member when they're onboarding in order to kind of start building the culture. These are these private little moments that if you kind of talked about them in a more principles-based way, it could really showcase you, in a proper way to the world. And I want to name something that gets conflated all the time. The algorithm and authority are different audiences with different needs. So I was on Instagram today and I saw this beautiful woman and her handsome husband. They're like an it couple or whatever. And they have millions and millions and millions of followers, right? And it's just like you would think at that look at that person and you would say, "Oh my goodness, I want to do that." But what she's doing, she's talking to a very general market in a certain, beauty, lifestyle, struggles, very vulnerable, all those things. But she's not trying to say, hey, come in. I'm going to actually, inject you with something or operate on you. It's a different market. So she rewards the algorithm with the types of things she puts out. And it's like there's some component of that with what you do, and you should speak to a digital marketer about that, but you want to amplify the right thing for the right people, right? And so authority rewards coherence. The algorithm rewards frequency, post every day, certain times. And when you do that, it tells the algorithm that you're active. But, in authority positioning, the executives, the founders, the institutions you want in your world, they're not counting how many times you posted. They're pattern recognizing. They're watching to see if you say the same thing consistently over time. And a little thing that I'm going to talk to you about, because I've been on both sides, I've gone to dermatology conferences and I've gone medical aesthetic conferences, and it's completely different, right? With some of the medical dermatology conferences. Many of the speakers have a quote unquote terrible social media. However, they have published papers. They are contributing to journals. They're speaking on the conference circuit. They've built a very great practice. However, no social media. There was a guy I actually talked to, and he said, I actually don't have Instagram at all, and I never want it. And yes, it's two different types of businesses rather, because medical dermatology and medical aesthetics are they are different beasts, but at the same time, they have a different type of authority, right? And so you want to make sure you have some of that too. So I've watched leaders with thousands of posts and no authority. And I've watched leaders with 40 posts who are known everywhere that they need to be known. And those are two different things. And so the first kind is really active. They're present, they're putting things out constantly, but every post is a different idea, trending topics, reactive talks, aesthetic shots, behind the scenes moments, and each one, individually it's fine. Together, they don't really add up to anything that could be repeated by someone who had seen it all to be a point of authority, right? The second kind had a position, something they keep coming back to, a conviction about how this work should be done, or why patients deserve something different, or what leadership in this field should actually look like. And they said it in different ways: stories, frameworks, reflections, case examples, but it was always the same thing underneath, right? And so the variable was not quantity, it was the coherence of that. And coherence, as I mentioned, it is a choice. It is a discipline. You have to decide what you are becoming known for and then have the patience to keep saying it until the market knows you for that. And like I said, you have to start wherever you are, even if it's messy. And brand is not a logo, it's a leadership system. And that is my motto on that. And so let's have some fun. So here's your exercise, and I actually want you to do this, not just think about doing it. So get a pen and paper, pause this, come back, and pull out your last 10 pieces of media: posts, videos, podcast episodes, emails, whatever you put out most recently. So let's do an exercise. So get a pen and paper. I'll wait. Come back, pause. So here's your exercise. So pull up your last 10 pieces of media. And we did this something similar to this before, but your posts, your videos, your podcast episodes, your emails, whatever you put out most recently. Label each one with one of these four categories. Is it talking to your origin story? Is it talking to your demonstrated judgment? Is it talking to your demonstrated result? Is it talking to your cultural proof? So your origin story means that this piece explains why you do this work and what you believe. Demonstrated judgment means this piece shows how you think about something specific in your field. A demonstrated result means this piece provides evidence, a client outcome, a business metric, a transformation. And cultural proof means this piece shows who else has validated your work: a room, a stage, an institution, a pair, perhaps, right? And then I want you to ask yourself these three questions. What is missing from those 10 pieces? What are you overusing? What are you avoiding? And why? And the avoidance question, if I'm going to talk to you about that, I think that's really the most important one to focus on, because the category that you're most reluctant to produce is actually where your most powerful narrative likely lives. So I'll just share mine, for example. So I looked at my 10 pieces that I put out, and I'm trying to be the cobbler with no shoes, right? I am working with our team to practice what we preach because we've come up with these methodologies, right? And the thing is, I realized, okay, my origin story has been there, but sporadically. I really index a lot for demonstrated judgment because I want you to know how I think. I over index on that. Demonstrated result. I wrote my book, Be Intentional or Relevant. Some case studies recently on my website, right? On our website. cultural proof. And this is something that I've had like mixed feelings about because, sometimes I'm like, I don't want to feel like I'm bragging or gloating about anything that I'm doing or any client that we have, but what we've realized is that we do need to put out more cultural proof and show that more, right? And so I think applying this framework, no matter what stage that you're at, really can keep you level headed. So if the media is not teaching the market how to understand you, it's really just activity. And activity, it keeps you visible, but coherence keeps you known to the right people. And in this industry, at the level that you're at, known is what opens the rooms that actually matter. And the next episode, we're going to be getting into proof, demonstrated results, cultural proof, and the distribution architecture that decides whether the right people are actually seeing your things. And these are the ingredients. At Diamond Hands Media, we've helped serious builders in medical aesthetics own their authority since 2020 through brand strategy, leadership media, and advisory that operates on the leadership level. We build the architecture.